Welcome to this conversation with American Mark Wolynn, who is the leader of the Family Constellation Institute in San Francisco and a leading expert in the world on inherited family trauma. Mark is also the author of the book It Didn't Start With You. In Danish, this is how it looks, Du ikke bare dig. And it's been translated into 20 languages now. And I really hope you will enjoy this conversation with Mark. It's about the different concrete ways that we will experience in our adult life and often unconsciously the different consequences of early breaking the bond with our mom or inherited trauma in the family. This we may see or feel this in many different areas of life. It could be in our love life, in our ability to create the financial security that we want, our ability to create the success for ourselves that we want, or many different other areas of lives. And I think it's amazing, and I hope you will enjoy this conversation as much as I did. So enjoy. So welcome to you, Mark Wolynn. I'm so happy you agreed to talk to me again.
Thank you for having me, Kisser.
I'm, as you know, I'm really excited about your work, and would love us to talk even more about how inherited trauma and early breaking the bond might influence our lives in ways that we don't know, and that I think even in ways that most of us have no way of knowing yet. And I think I'm so excited about it also because I have been doing personal development work with myself since I was 15, and I'm 50 now. And I had seen a lot of the patterns that I see with through working with you, but not this way. Like, not this way. It gives a completely new view and a new possibility of an even deeper healing. And so when I find something like that, I really want to share it with the world because I think it's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And maybe we could just start, if you like, to talk a little about some of the consequences that you see from. I guess it could be all around our life, really.
Yeah, in the trainings I talk about the 4 unconscious themes, the
Yes.
4 ways that we're limited in terms of our life force. And really, I don't mean to make this my model, but it's my model. Mm-hmm. When someone sits in front of me, I'm looking at one of 4 ways that the life force has been eclipsed or shut down, or it doesn't flow fully. Mm-hmm. And it'll probably be a long discussion here. One of them, of course, is the break in the attachment with the mother. Mm-hmm. But one of them is when we're also merged unconsciously with the situation or the life experience of a parent. Mm-hmm. They suffer, and we could have even been born before their suffering, and still manage to live a life similar to theirs. This has nothing to do with epigenetics, mm-hmm. because we've already been born into this world. Mm-hmm. But a parent fails at 40, and we make financial decisions that cause our financial ruin at mm-hmm. 40. Mm-hmm. Or a parent lives obese or unwell or ill, and unconsciously merged with that parent, we don't take care of our body, we don't take care of our health. Mm. Or mom has a relationship where she's treated poorly by dad, and a woman maybe goes into a relationship where she's treated poorly, without realizing that she's repeating her mother's life situation. So of course, this is one of the unconscious themes. We've unconsciously merged
Mm,
with the life experience of a parent. Mom gives away a child, her first child, and we abort our first child.
mm,
Um, our parents break up at 30, and all of a sudden we hit the age 30 and we look at our partner and we say, gee, you just don't do it for me anymore, without realizing that
mm,
we've been unconsciously pulled by a force
mm,
that does not have to do with
mm,
epigenetics because we're already born.
mm,
So, really, if someone were to ask me, what is this force?
mm,
I would have to say, we don't quite know, but
mhm,
it appears there's an unconscious loyalty,
mm,
an unconscious agreement, an unconscious connection that I can't have more than you. I
mm,
can't do better than you.
mm.
I I can't let you suffer in this way alone.
Yeah.
So this dynamic would be merging with the life experience of parent.
Mhm,
Then, of course, there's a break in the attachment, which is long, so I'll talk about that later. But let me next talk about rejection of a parent.
mhm,
Now, this is common.
mhm,
Most of us reject a parent, feel that we didn't get enough, feel that they didn't do the right thing, feel that something they did had spoiled our lives. And what's interesting is this type of rejection we don't see, but it affects us unconsciously. I've seen it happen in three ways. For example, if our um, uh, parent, let's say, was cold or ignored us
mhm,
or was violent, we can't see this, but we will disown those behaviors inside ourselves.
mhm,
We won't be able to see when we're cold
mhm,
or we're violent or we're ignoring people. In
mhm,
fact, it'll express in us unconsciously. We'll say, I'll never be like her or
mhm.
I'll never be like him. And then we find ourselves very much acting the same way, but
Yeah.
often we can't see it. It's unconscious.
Mhm,
That's the one way
mhm,
rejecting a parent shows up unconsciously. Another way it shows up unconsciously is we'll pull in a partner who treats us similarly
mhm,
to the way we perceive the parent treated us.
mhm,
For example, if the parent ignored us or was cold or was violent or was unavailable, we pull in a partner who's unavailable or violent
mhm,
or mistreated us or ignored us or is distant or cold.
mhm.
And um, repeating the cycle. In
Yeah.
other words, the rejection of the parent has caused us to um, choose a partner or even turn a good partner bad. I like to say this
Mhm,
because we can have a very nice partner, but through our hypervigilance and
mhm,
our not trusting and our eyes and defended posture,
mhm.
our partner will ignore us or be distant toward us or treat us cruelly
Yeah.
because there's no avenue in.
Mhm,
So the rejection creates also a defensive posturing, a defensive strategy,
mhm,
where the partner is pulled in, who either does the same as what we perceive the parent to have done, or
mhm.
we will make the partner do the same.
Yeah.
And then, thirdly, the way a rejection of a parent works is we can treat ourselves similarly to
Mhm,
the way we feel the parent treated us. If the parent ignored us, we can ignore the young child part of ourselves. If the parent was cruel, we could be inwardly cruel to ourselves. If the parent was aggressive, we
mhm.
could be inwardly aggressive. If the parent was critical, we can be self critical,
Yeah.
doing to ourselves what we perceive the parent did. So it's never a great idea to
Mhm,
keep the rejection of a parent going.
mhm,
I even talk about this in the book when I tell the Harvard study, the Harvard mastery of stress
mhm.
study. And
Yeah.
it was so simple. They looked at 21-year-olds
Mhm,
and they asked one question. They said, okay, describe your mother and then describe your father. And you only have four choices.
mhm,
It was either warm and close,
mhm,
or friendly, or strained, I'm sorry, or tolerant,
mhm,
or strained and cold.
mhm.
And those of us, they followed them for 35 years until they were 56. And those of us who checked the box for the mother, strained, tolerant, strained, cold, 91% of us had a significant health issue, like coronary artery disease or alcoholism or diabetes, compared with less than half, 45%, 35 years later, who checked the box warm and close and friendly. Similar numbers with the father, 82 and 50%. And 100% if we rejected both parents, we were likely to have a physical or psychological, emotional health concern.
Yeah.
And so it's not, what I've learned through time is it's not just a good idea to heal our relationship with our parents. It can actually help improve our health. Plus, I see very little healing when we hold the old story. We hold the story of what my parents did to me. That story creates an inner image, and that story is hard to heal from. So when we feel that we've been wronged or victimized or abused, we create again a template for either pulling someone in who will treat us terribly or abuse us. Yeah, it's the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, so we'll keep creating a life that resembles the inner life, the inner stories.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
But what if people are listening now and thinking, but I was mistreated and I am angry and this is the truth for me. How do I heal this?
Yeah, well, okay. So let me start off by saying never throw yourself in front of a moving train. If your parents are acting in a way that's harmful, get out of the path. However, once you're out of the path and you can reflect in a broader way, you can see that behind your parents, behind their actions, behind their behaviors, behind their criticism, behind their hurtfulness, was a traumatic event. And this traumatic event blocked the flow of love they could give. And when we truly understand this, it changes things. I mean, it changes things. We fill with compassion, and then through that compassion, we engage other areas of our brain, which is, we engage the prefrontal cortex, and then that through compassion, which is a state that feeds the prefrontal cortex, we begin to feel more peaceful inside. It doesn't excuse what they did, but it does explain. And that's what I do in the book. I teach the readers to receive something good, even when very little was given. And I want to just say this again. It's important that we lose the story that we have about our parents. I find that the more we reject our parents, the more we suffer. I mean, plain and simple. The more we reject them, the more we suffer. What's unhealed in us continues to live on inside us. And healing with them, all it means is that we're in tune with what they could give us, as well as what they could not give us. It doesn't mean that our parents are perfect. It means, oh, Mom, Dad, I get it. I understand. That's something that I can't get. I get it. And, people talk about this word, forgiveness. I forgive you, Dad. I forgive you, Mom. And of course, this separates us further from them. It actually sets us on a higher tier. The easier word inside our soul, to use the word soul, is I get it. Mom, I get it. Dad, I get it. I understand. Anyone who had that childhood, of course, couldn't love. And that's the place I'd like people to be able to get to. Instead, we've become fixated on something we believe the parents have done to us. And it's ruined our lives, it's spoiled our lives, and it's grown way out of proportion. And this just creates a template inside us that forges our later relationships to be terrible and, and the early traumas to keep repeating. So.
Yeah, that's interesting. And now that you say the word soul, I find that the more we can do this work, the more we can access the love within the soul, well, on soul level, that was never not there. It was always there. It was just the consciousness of the love, which was just blocked because of trauma, and that's all it was really. And I think you can somehow, by seeing that, make the stream of love start flowing again. So you by keeping stuck in the trauma, you'll sort of try to keep the flow of love stuck, and you can make it flow again.
Absolutely. And sometimes it isn't even with our parents. We have, what I call one of the four themes. We're identified with someone other than the parents.
Yeah.
And we don't even make this connection. We repeat the life experience of a grandmother or a grandfather or an uncle or an aunt or an older sibling or the first partner of our father, his first wife who he treated poorly or who left him, or the first wife of our grandfather or grandmother, her first husband. These people belong in our family, especially when there's been a difficult fate or a tragic event. Someone was killed, somebody felt responsible for someone's death, somebody did something terrible, they didn't mean to, but they harmed a child. The grandpa backed out of the driveway and didn't see the little boy on the tricycle. And these events, when the healing isn't resolved, when the grief is still unresolved, someone later in the family will identify with that 5-year-old boy on the tricycle, or with the grandfather. And I find this through people's trauma language. For example, here we are born 2 or 3 generations later, saying, I'll do something terrible. I'll hurt a child. It'll be all my fault. I'll be hated. I'll be ostracized. I'll ruin everybody's life, and it'll be by something I did. And I'll say, what did you do?
Yeah.
And the person will say, well, nothing that I know of.
Yeah.
But when we look into the history, grandfather or grandmother accidentally felt responsible for the death of a child or for death of another person.
Yeah.
And we carry their experience in our psyche. And so that's the third theme. That's we entangled with someone other than the parent. So you've got merged with the life experience of a parent and how that affects us. You've got rejecting a parent and how that affects us. And then you have identified with someone other than the parents and how that affects us. And then the big one, we have a break in the attachment with our mother. And I'd like to talk about that because that's many of us. So when we have a break in the bond with our mother, it's a challenge to feel safe and secure in life. When mother's connection is either cut off physically or emotionally, we have difficulty trusting the feeling of who we are inside. That's because the feeling of who we are is contingent. It's dependent upon her seeing and holding us in her gaze. So when she sees us, we have this feeling of expansion and this feeling of goodness inside our body. But when it's cut off, we stop trusting that inner feeling.
Yeah.
So a break in a bond with our mother is felt as a break in the bond with ourselves.
Yeah.
The psychoanalyst Heinz Kohut talks about how the gleam in the mother's eye is the vehicle for which the child develops into a healthy narcissism or a healthy development, a healthy way. And when we're cut off from our mother's presence, again, either emotionally or physically, we're cut off from our core, our gut feelings. Mother and baby are like 2 tuning forks, and she's actually tuning the right hemisphere of our brain. The baby's prefrontal cortex gets tuned by the mother's feeling states. But if mom's depressed, or she's not in sync with her baby, or her attunement's out of whack, the baby gets the message, something's wrong. What's wrong? She's afraid. If she's afraid, I'm afraid. And if her attention is diverted because of repeated stressors, the baby panics. Well,
Yeah.
where did she go? Where did she go? Or the baby, and I'm talking about a baby without a cognitive
Yeah.
understanding for this, even in utero.
Yeah.
Where did she go? I don't matter.
Yeah.
Or I'm not enough, or I'm too much. Or ultimately, something must be wrong with me.
Yeah.
That's the message we get.
Yeah.
So when we come to that place, as early as in utero, we learn to leave the core and begin to organize around our mother's feeling states. If I can make her feel okay, then I'll be okay. In fact, this is quite a common strategy. The baby begins to make the mother feel better,
Yeah.
even in utero, even in the body, out of the body.
Yeah.
The baby is the regulator, I've heard said,
Mm.
of the mother's nervous system.
Wow.
Almost though if I can make mom feel okay, it's a strategy, then she'll make me feel okay.
Yeah.
But then we repeatedly have this early practice of leaving our core repeatedly because we no longer trust receiving from her kisser. And then when this happens, we feel alone inside. And then we yearn for the dopamine that's missing in the brain's reward motivation circuitry. And then we start to search outside ourselves for what's missing in alcohol, in drugs, in TV, in our cell phone. You know, they've even shown that every time we go on the cell phone to like somebody or be liked, that we're actually increasing our dopamine. And you know, the cell phone can be a metaphor for even who's missing, maybe even our mother, and all the loneliness that we feel inside. And then a baby that has a break in the attachment can later in life, because you asked me this question, what happens to us? Well, we can develop financial insecurities. Because what is an infant's wealth? What is an infant's currency? An infant's currency, an infant's wealth is mother's attunement. That's the main currency of a baby. And when we didn't have enough and didn't get enough from our mother, we grew up in life with a feeling of not having enough and never getting enough, no matter how much we have. So it can affect us in our financial issues or even our relationship issues. You know, everything's fine. We're cruising along, and then all of a sudden we meet the partner, and all of a sudden we are terrified because those feelings of it's not safe begin to take us over. And we're reluctant because our mother, that bond was broken. We're reluctant ever to reach out again to the partner. And then we have developed these patterns of come close, stay away, come close, stay away, you know, and our bodies held together with tightness and anxiety and numbness. Now, you know, I do want to say attachment doesn't have to be perfect.
No.
It only has to be, Edward Tronick says, 20 to 30% in sync, and that's good enough.
Yeah. Yeah. So no wonder so many of us struggle with self-love, self-esteem, and inner guidance.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Where does that feeling of selfness come from? But her reflection. And it's not to make, you know, it's not, some people say you put this all on the mother. No, it's not. It's just these events are uh, important to heal. We all are born with in a template and form a template from our early experiences. And that becomes our soul's path. That becomes our you know, what is it we're here to resolve? Well, I'm here to stand on my own without fear of being taken down or without fear of being ruined, which was my path, which came from the break in the bond. So for me personally, I was terrified I'd be ruined or annihilated or destroyed because of inner events that happened when I was in the womb. They're very early events, but we all have some path, perhaps some element, some essence of the attachment that we're still here healing. Some of us healing our health, some of us healing feelings of worthlessness, or feelings of not being good enough, or feelings of being too much. You know, if we had to mute ourselves so we wouldn't interfere with mom who
Yeah.
was stressed,
Yeah.
we then developed the inner sentence, I'm too much. I'm too much for my partner. I was too much for my family.
Yeah.
I'm too much, which isn't fair for us to walk around with. It was just, again, an early strategy of
Mm.
mute
Mm.
your light
Yeah.
because mom is stressed.
Yeah. It makes so much sense. Like last year, we had a session around this as well. I experienced so much vulnerability around my business, my professional life, because doing soul talk and my books and things like that, my reach out into the world expanded, and that made me so alert and conscious and nervous, and I became so preoccupied with doing it, being good enough and giving people everything that they would expect from me and even more, and going into actually a behavior that's not it's not my usual behavior or not my usual pattern. But that was what happened. And after our session, I realized that this fear of expansion was like this very, very early, probably already in my mom's stomach and very early life, that this was what happened. I would become alert of her and her emotions and preoccupied with making her happy, really. And that was what I projected out into the world to all the people listening to me and reading my books. And it was so helpful to see that. Otherwise, I don't know how I would have broken that anxious feeling.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. That's exactly right.
Mm.
So it's, we don't know other than the fact that expansion often led to contraction.
Yeah.
So the moment we came into a feeling of goodness, there was another stressor that kicked us into a feeling of contraction.
Mm.
So after a while, we even begin to self-sabotage,
Mm.
to contract ourselves before we're met with contraction. So
Yeah.
some of us have a hard time even staying in expansion. Maybe, we started to expand into the world and we were met with forceps,
Mm.
or we expanded into the world and we were placed in an incubator.
Yeah.
So we begin to associate expansion with contraction and
Mm.
even create our own contraction because it's safer, because at least we know that state. Expansion can be very scary.
Yeah. Don't you think we do that a lot in many aspects of life, love life
Yeah.
and success and
Yeah, and to our um, credit, when we try to heal this expansion, this contraction, we then find ourselves living a life with more well-being, more expansion, and when it goes away, because we do the inner work,
yeah.
it doesn't go away as long,
Mm.
or we don't go down as deeply,
Yeah.
or we hit the contraction and we say, "Oh, I've been here before."
Yeah. I know this.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No, yeah, that's why I'm telling you, because of course you know this,
Yeah.
because it's what you bring to the world, this feeling that, hey world, wake up, we can live with well-being.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But you're so right. We get to know this territory so that we can navigate through it much easier and not get lost in it.
Yeah.
Mm. So there are these four ways, but when I'm thinking about my life, I think I have more, not just one. I rejected my mom. I over identified with her grief. And yeah, at least two of them.
Oh yeah, some of us have three of them. We
Yeah.
have a break in the bond, so
I
we
have,
don't trust her love. Now
yeah.
we reject her. And
Yeah.
now we reject her, and now we've merged with her.
Yeah.
And we repeat her life experience. It's interesting in that unconscious loyalty.
Mm.
Maybe that our way of loving or connecting is
Mm.
to suffer similarly.
Mm.
And, we have to consider that as well, that this suffering with her can be an unconscious way of joining her. I
Yeah.
talk about that in the book.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you think that when we spot that our parents are not able to take care of their own emotions, their own grief, we will take it on, merge with it, sort of try to help it?
It's funny you say that. Yeah, I see that often,
Mm.
where a parent can't heal his
Mm.
or her own stuff and
Mm.
it's spilling out everywhere. And we, as the child, almost in a way, um, unconsciously say, Dad, that you're not the bad guy alone.
Yeah.
I'll cheat too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dad, that you're not the loser alone. I'll be a loser too.
Yeah.
Mom, that you're not unhappy alone. I'll be unhappy too. Yeah, I see this all the time. And it's
Mm.
what we call unconscious loyalty.
Yeah. Wow.
An unconscious thread that ties us together,
Mm.
even with the parent that we don't like.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't like that parent at all.
Yeah.
And I'll say, it's interesting how similarly you're living the life of,
Mm.
or carrying the fears of, or repeating the life experience of.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I try to push them away.
Mm.
I say, haven't you noticed that the more you push them away,
Mm.
the deeper into this pattern it takes you?
Yeah.
Let's go the other direction and see what happens.
Yeah.
And then we find when we heal the relationship, we break the entanglement.
Mm.
It's
Yeah.
a strange message to give people
Mm.
that you mean I have to heal the relationship with the parent I didn't like?
Yeah.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
you want to free your life.
Yeah.
Other than that, that parent you don't like becomes the partner you don't like, becomes the boss you don't like, becomes the environment you don't like. I'll give you an example.
Mm.
If we're in a womb that's very stressful and our environment, our mom's stress is uh, raining down cortisol, the stress, a stress hormone,
Yeah.
and our womb, the womb is being battered with cortisol, and the inner environment doesn't feel safe. How do you think we do with the outer environment?
Yeah.
Often not very well. We
Mm.
may have food allergies. We may be sensitive to light, be sensitive to sounds, be sensitive to smells, be sensitive to environmental toxins,
Mm.
be sensitive. So we might be overly sensitive to our outer environment because our inner environment wasn't very safe.
Yeah.
But the healing for the outer environment
Mm.
must include the healing of the inner environment, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
It does make sense. So how can we do that? How can we heal something that's already done and a long time ago, and sometimes not even with in this life? Might even be like I experienced in this last session with you. It was a trauma between my mom and her mom, and my the way that influenced me being in my mom's womb when she was already in my grandmother's womb at 17-year-old in 1938. um, how do
Because we know you were there. We know from science, just
exactly.
for the listener, we know that the egg, we know that when grandmother's pregnant with mother, and mother's only 5 months of fetus, her cell line stops dividing. Her egg, so all the eggs that she'll ever have are already in her womb when she's a fetus at 5 months old, and one of those eggs, of course, is us.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a feeling that, oh my goodness, I'm in my grandmother's womb. Well, technically, a piece of you is in your grandmother's womb,
Yes.
inside your mother's womb. Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, you talk about how do we heal this? Well, you've inherited your mother's stress response.
Yeah.
I would guess. I mean, I would guess that the way she adapted biologically to deal
Mm-hmm.
with the stressors
Mm-hmm.
um, would have been heritable, because stress responses are heritable.
Yeah.
So whether we've inherited it or it happened to us, the healing's the same. We've got to tackle
Mm.
the amygdala. We've got to tackle the midbrain. We've got to tackle the limbic brain, and the way we do that is by feeding it good experiences,
Mm.
positive experiences that calm this stress response, and then practicing these experiences, letting them have meaning for us. So, a lot of times I might help somebody develop a practice, but they don't do it because it's not meaningful. It has to be meaningful or they won't practice it. So it can be a daily practice of integrating the young child parts, bringing them back into our core. It can be lying beneath a photograph of our mom who's deceased. It can be practicing a state of compassion, or having a generosity practice where every day we do something kind, or a loving kindness practice. It can be what Oprah taught us, having a gratitude practice every night before we go to bed, or waking up feeling grateful. These states, these feeling states feed the prefrontal cortex, and we've got to grow the good. So once we practice this positive feeling and the sensations that go along with it, what I do in my work, I teach somebody to stay with the energy. When we feel good inside, what's the energy?
Yeah.
Oh, I feel peaceful. Nope, go deep into peace. When you're in peaceful inside, what's happening physically in your body? Oh, I feel, and they'll give another word that may have nothing to do with this feeling. They'll say, yeah, I feel relaxed. Okay, go into relax. When you're relaxed, what actually is happening? Is there a spreading, a opening? Is your spine more, can you sense your spine more? Can you feel your blood flowing? Can you feel pulses? Can you feel waves? Can you feel current? Can you feel tingling? Can you feel buzzing? And once we get at this level, we're down into the juice. We're down into the depth of it. And so it's practicing for, even a minute, 6 times a day, feeling the flow, the current, the waves, the buzzing, the tingling feeling of being in the energy. Because then the amygdala says, oh, it looks like she's got this. It looks like I don't have to have this. I don't have to send out alarm bells to the alarm towers and say, quick, tighten up, quick, get out of the body, get out of there, tighten, shrink, jolt away. Instead, the amygdala says, oh, I guess I don't have to do anything, because the message in the body is that we're feeling at rest, at peace. The buzzing, the flowing.
So
And
we're
it gets
actually changing the chemistry of the body and the brain.
Yeah, we're changing the chemistry of the body brain. Absolutely. When we do this, we even change the neurotransmitters. We stimulate the release of feel-good neurotransmitters like dopamine and GABA and serotonin.
Yeah.
We stimulate the release of feel-good hormones like estrogen and oxytocin. And then, the new studies show that even the way our genes express, that changes too, which is really cool. They're doing studies with mice now where they're reversing the trauma symptoms in mice, and it changes the way the DNA expresses. Technically, it inhibits the enzyme that causes DNA methylation and histone modifications, which are 2 of the mechanisms behind this epigenetic transfer. So they'll traumatize baby mice. Isabelle Monsuy is doing some great research right now in the Zurich Brain Institute at the University of Zurich. And she's doing, she's traumatizing mice, and then she's placing these traumatized mice as adults into positive, low stress environments. And it's reversing the trauma symptoms. Their behavior's improving. The changes in DNA methylation is changing, which is preventing the mice from it being transmitted to the mice in the following generation. Remember in the book I talk about the mice that were shocked every time they smelled the cherry blossom scent? And then they could see the effects for 3 generations. The pups and the grandpups that weren't even shocked, every time they smelled the scent, they were terrified. So that researcher, Brian Diaz, he's doing really good work at Emory Medical School in Atlanta. He's teaching those mice not to fear the scent by repeatedly exposing them to it and then not shocking them. And then these mice are no longer showing the heightened sensitivity to the smell, and their sperm has lost that fearful epigenetic signature that passes to future generations. So there's so many good things that are happening right now. Isabelle Monsuy, she's actually looking at the blood of humans that were traumatized, and she's finding similar changes in the blood of mice with the humans. Remember the terrible attack in 2015 in Nice, where that guy drove the van into the promenade, the walkway, and killed 80 people?
Yes.
Well, the people that survived, she's looking at their blood samples, and she's finding correlations in the blood with the traumatized mice. She's also looking at Pakistani orphans, who've lost their parents and had terrible breaks in the bonds, breaks in the attachment when their mothers were young. So she examines their blood samples, and she finds that there are changes in the levels of fatty acids in their blood and saliva that also mirrors the changes in the traumatized mice, and similar small non-coding RNA alterations in the humans, in these orphans, and in the mice. We remember from our biology class that RNA, it's copied from DNA.
Yeah.
And it acts as a messenger to instruct the cell's ribosomes to produce proteins, and that turns on and off genes. But the cells also contain small non-coding RNAs that don't produce proteins, but they piggyback onto the messenger RNAs, and they interfere with or amplify their function, causing more or less of the proteins to be produced, more or less of the genes to turn on and off. And so, one of the mechanisms that they're studying right now is, these small non-coding RNAs, both in humans and in mice. And they're seeing that, okay, positive experiences, positive environments can even make changes to this.
That's amazing. That's amazing, and so good to know, because I was just thinking today, I was on my Facebook page, and I asked people, what life issues do you see that you have, and what would you like me to talk about? And a lot of people would say fear, worry, judgment, not being able to accept life. And I actually remember when I started practicing, allowing myself to just be peaceful and happy, and my ego, or my super ego, would in the beginning it would go, this is very dangerous. you need to be alert again. You need to think about the future. You need to be ahead of yourself. You need to try to be in control of life, because just being in this blissful, happy, relaxed state is too dangerous for you. But I just kept practicing it because that just felt right.
Yeah.
And now it's become a lot easier for me. But I actually remember the inner battle that I think maybe a lot of us have, but we need to be persistent as well, right? And strong will to just keep doing it, even though our ego will say, this is a waste of time, very shortly, something's going to happen and you can't stay in this state, and things like that.
Very well put. We have to be strong-willed and keep practicing. It's like exercise. I don't want to exercise, but I have to exercise because it's good for my body, but I'm so lazy. We have to be strong-willed and, stick to our mindfulness practices, stick to our meditation practices. Stick to our even physical exercise practices. But absolutely. Even, the neuroscientists talk about as little as 30 seconds at time, 6 times a day is enough to change the brain.
Wow, so that's good to know.
Yeah. So even staying in a practice for a minute a day of that energetic feeling of connectiveness, waves, river of blood flowing, pulses, staying in that place of tingling and buzzing energy moving in my body, that can be enough. Do it 6 times a day for a minute.
Yeah, that's good to know. And it could sometimes even just be connecting with nature could do it, right?
Absolutely. There's so many things. Yes.
Yeah. Could we just for a few minutes maybe talk about the core language, because maybe that could help some of the people listening to do a bit of the puzzle. Sometimes life seems like a puzzle and you've seen parts of it and some of the parts are just not in place, and the core language can help you understand, right?
Yeah. So I call trauma language, the
Mm.
trauma language that we all carry, I
Yeah.
call it our core language, because it lives in our core. We don't separate the traumas that that language speaks about
Mm.
from the events of the previous generation. And, so I've discovered that when a trauma does happen, it leaves these clues behind
Yeah.
in our language,
Yeah.
clues in the form of emotionally charged words and sentences that leave a breadcrumb trail.
Yeah.
And we've got to learn how to pull it out. So, in the book, I ask readers all these questions,
Yeah.
um, so that they can come up with this language. And then I ask the reader to discern whether this language is from a, a break in the attachment,
Mm.
or this language is from a generational trauma.
Yeah.
For example, if it's from a generational trauma,
Mm.
that language might sound like, I'll do something terrible.
Mm.
I'll harm somebody.
Yeah.
I'll, uh, I'll, I'll, I'll be hated. I'll
Mm.
be ostracized.
Mm.
I'll be sent away.
Mm.
I'll go crazy. They'll lock me up.
Mm.
And some of us carry this language, or I'll do something terrible. It'll be all my fault. I won't deserve to live.
Yeah.
And so I'll say, what did you do? And nothing, but we find out somebody caused an accident and someone died and they felt they didn't deserve to live.
Mm.
So you know, or somebody did go crazy. They were locked in an institution, maybe grandmother's sister, and never let out.
Yeah.
And, or, back in the day, a woman could have postpartum depression and they could lock her in an institution,
Mm.
um, because it was very unfair. And
Yeah.
things like this could happen,
Mm.
never realizing what they were dealing with.
Mm.
Um,
So you're right. In your book, you have great questions to discover this kind of language. And does it also feel like this language is not really part of you? It feels like it is you, and the words will come out of you, but like it's not you.
Exactly. We think it's us. We
Yeah.
think, yeah, this is what I say. I always feel like it'll be my fault, and
Mm.
I'll do something terrible, and
Mm.
I'll be hated by everybody, and I walk around life and I don't go into public, and
Mm.
I don't take risks. So
Yeah.
this language that we think is us
Yeah.
is literally making our choices.
Yeah.
Either making our choices to repeat trauma, or making our choices to avoid trauma and take no risks in life. And then, there's this other language too that comes from, I already talked about it when I talked about the break in the attachment.
Mm.
But when we have a break in the bond, it could even be our father's break in the bond with his mother, or
Mm.
our mother's break in the bond with her mother. And it could be her inner sentences that we carry,
Yeah.
and our own inner sentences we carry, because breaks create more breaks.
Yeah.
If our mom didn't get enough, she might not be able to give enough.
Mm.
But sometimes that language is, I'll be all alone.
Mm.
I'll be abandoned. I'll be rejected. I'll be left. I'll lose control. I'll be helpless. I'll be powerless.
Mm.
I'll be homeless, even.
Yeah.
My early language, I'll be annihilated. I'll be ruined. I'll be destroyed. I
Mm.
talk about it in the book.
Yeah.
Some people's language, I won't matter. I won't exist.
Mm.
I'm too much. I'm not enough. I'm worthless.
Yeah.
So, we have two types of language. We have this break in the attachment language that can also be generational, but
Mm.
it can also be from our break in the attachment with our mother.
Yeah.
And then we have this generational language.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's important when the reader reads the book to look to answer these questions so that they can heal. It's
Mm.
important we heal.
Mm.
It is, I say, in English, the
Mm.
title of the book is called "It Didn't Start with You."
Yeah.
I don't know what the Danish title is. What is the Danish title?
It's translated into English. It's You're Not Just You.
You're not just you. Okay.
Yeah.
So in English, we have this as, it didn't start with you, because that's probably the case. The
Yeah.
trauma did not start with you. It's probably happened with your mother and her mother, or her mother and her mother, or
Mm.
your father when he was little, or your grandfather. So
Mm.
it's important that we start to shake the family tree and
It
see what
really-
falls out.
Yeah.
What stories didn't get told, what traumas never healed all the way.
Yeah.
What secrets are hiding in the family?
Yeah. Yeah, it's so important. You know, I was thinking of our session the other day when I was telling you about my 12-year-old, 13-year-old lifetime with my parents, and I said the sentence, they were pretending to be my parents, but they were not really. And when I said the words, I was thinking to myself, no, let me rewind that. I didn't want to say that. Why did I say that? Where did those words come from? And of course, those were the words that you picked to work with. But that was what I was thinking, and then I started explaining myself why I said that. But actually, I wanted to rewind and reverse and not say those words, because it was like, I don't know why I said that. But then we figured out that feeling, I could explain that out from a psychological perspective. I could explain why I would feel something like that. But those words said like that, I've never said those words said like that before. And and so we realized that was my mom talking. She had parents who pretended to be her parents, and I hadn't seen that connection before. Yeah, which was amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, it's funny how we give ourselves away in the session through our language.
Yeah.
Don't
I
even
never want to have another session with you. Yeah, no, I do.
no,
I
we
love
give ourselves away right in the language, which is why as a practitioner, I'm always listening to what's being said, because sometimes the person says it, but
Yeah.
it isn't their language, as we discovered.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's quite amazing. So for people listening, you can investigate that, look at that. And the question you asked was, who had parents who felt like, who had parents who pretended to be someone's parents? And I knew right away it was my mom, but you know, we could ask those questions, right? Who in the family history would feel this way?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
To try to make the
Yeah.
puzzle. And just knowing that, just making the dots makes a great difference.
Yes.
Yeah.
Totally. You
Yeah.
know, I think Dan Siegel says we have to have a coherent narrative. Maybe I'm misquoting,
Yeah.
but it helps us have that coherent narrative.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah. Well, I think it's maybe a good place to
Yeah.
finish off
Yeah.
with an invitation for everyone listening to investigate the language and keep practicing, even if the ego or superego will be resistant. Do it anyway.
Or even to come to my training in Denmark.
Yes.
I'll be teaching clinicians how to do this work May 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, right in Copenhagen.
Yeah, I'll be there for sure. And in June, right?
And in June, the second module. The first module is how to take the case, how to listen for trauma language, how to get to a case within really one sentence, get
Yeah.
to the heart of the case. And then the second module was then what do we do about it? How to have effective resolutions, often in one session,
Yeah.
because sometimes I don't get to have more than one session with people.
No.
So I'll teach how to work one-on-one using family constellations, but doing them one-on-one with people.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be great.
I look forward to it.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much, Mark.
You're so welcome, Kisser. Thank you again for having me. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.